Absolute Green Lantern, issue 1, Al Ewing writing with JAHNOY LINDSAY on the art. So, yeah, I was very curious to see what this would be. Obviously, the cover, it was obviously a black woman who is the Green Lantern, seemingly, and we find out in the book that it's Jo. And that maybe that was news that was out there, but I'd been avoiding it, so this was all a surprise to me. But we don't actually start with her. We start with Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan's in this book, as is John Stewart, and we don't meet him, but there is a Guy Gardner referenced.
Yeah, I will say, I will get out there. I trust in Ewing, right? I've read enough things from Ewing that I enjoy. It is a little bit weird in the Ultimate Universe that all the Green Lanterns seemingly work together in this small town, or are all aware of each other, right?
Well,
a little bit odd.
Well, not even just aware. They seem to be like an old friend group for the most part. At least some of them, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't mind. I actually think that's one of the best little changes. I think that's like an interesting idea. It's like, oh, they already know each other. They don't meet because they're Green Lanterns.
I just think it's weird because they're all from different walks of life. That's what I always kind of like about the different Lanterns. And that, so all of them being from this small town, it was a little bit weird. Again, nothing about the quality because everything's fine. It was something that popped up as I was reading.
Yeah. I don't think that's weird at all. I actually think that's like a smart change if you want to include multiple of those characters, because otherwise it'd be weird to have them all run into each other like very quickly. So, we start off with this kind of ominous thing where we keep going back to this black panel with just like a white circle or a ring, perhaps you might say, with this voice speaking to Hal Jordan. But he's like stumbling down the road. A cop car pulls up and asks if he's okay. He's walking in the desert. It's not really a safe or good idea. And he keeps having his hand in his pocket kind of awkwardly, and the cop gets a little edgy about it and says, "Hey, what have you got in your pocket there? Is it drugs? Is it a weapon?" And he pulls out his gun, he points at him, and Hal's like, "Please don't, please don't." And the cop's yelling at him, like, take his hands out, slowly, so on. And then it just goes black, and then there's a full page after that where there's just like a little crater and some smoke of where the policeman was standing before he is dead. So, like, right away, we're doing this thing where, okay, Hal Jordan, not that he's a villain per se, because it's not really his fault. He's obviously infected or he's attached to by something that we get to. But, like, he is not the hero of this story. He is not the one who is, like, getting the ring and, try to save the day. That's not what we're doing here. So, right away, sets up something interesting. And, he stumbles into a diner, and, they're fairly nice to him, but this news report comes on about Greenvale, which is the town that all the lanterns are from. And there's a giant Green Lantern symbol that's, like, sort of basically just landed
It's Evergreen.
Oh, sorry, Evergreen. Yeah. What'd I call it?
It's Evergreen. Greenvale. Which, not a bad name. But yeah,
mine's just filling in the blanks. So... yeah, giant Green Lantern symbol is just crushed like an entire like city, like couple of blocks. So there's news broadcasts about it. No one knows what it is. It's kind of this weird thing. And then we flash back to what was happening when this happened. And this is when we get to see Hal when he's normal and he's not like scared because he's trying to control this thing that's attached to him. And he's sitting with John Stewart. He's sitting with Jo. And they're talking about why she's back in town. She's moved back from the city. She was in Coast City. They also talk about how that guy tried to offer her a place back in the Force, which says that she used to be a cop, which lines up with what she was in the regular universe to some extent. It also tells us that Guy is currently a cop, most likely. So
checks out.
And everyone's like, at least she's mad at him, which also feels like it's just right for Guy Gardner. Not seen yet, but the attitude towards him is adding up and makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. So that's a whole thing. So yeah, but there's this, the green bubble appears, clearly a construct of some kind. I did kind of like this idea though, that they don't really know what it is, and they're kind of inside this green bubble, and they're kind of saying, oh, it's kind of like a force field that you'd see in a movie or something. Like I kind of like them trying to like just sort of talk their way through what the hell it is.
Yeah, I like that Hal goes and touches it, and he's like, it's like spongy, but you can't get through it, and that's what he says, like a force field. So that was a fun way to interact with it. Yeah, because I never really thought what a construct feels like, right? We just look like they're a solid kind of thing, but I've never really stopped to think about what it'd be like to touch one.
I figured it could be hard or spongy depending on what the construct was.
Yeah.
But this seems to be going for spongy for this force field at least. And so when they're inside the bubble talking, there's this green tint over all the panels to sort of give you this idea that they're inside it, which is kind of neat. But they look up into the sky, they see the big Green Lantern symbol coming down, and we get a look at Abin Sur, who Hal had already mentioned. He mumbles to himself at one point, "Oh, Abin Sur came down." And Abin Sur looks very different. He's got like a giant sort of tail from his head kind of thing. He's also got an extra pair of arms.
Extra pair of arms, no clothing.
No clothing.
Like, nothing there.
Or genitals.
Yeah, he kind of... Yeah. And he's built like a Ken doll, looks like. Looks kind of like Saint Walker, right? Meets Gore from Thor.
Oh, I can see the Saint Walker comparison because of the head thing.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So... definitely not the pink bald-headed dude that I'm used to with Abin Sur.
No, and it's definitely not like a crash landing in the same way that normally, because he doesn't look like he's in distress as he's landing here.
No,
at least right away anyway. But like Hal's sort of mumbling to himself, and he's also acting suspicious to these people in the diner, so they start to freak out about him and ask him questions. The one pulls a gun on him, and then when the guy pulls his hand out of his pocket, we see it's black. So we get this idea that this is the absolute version of Black Hand, is something that's actually attached itself to Hal Jordan. And we even see like a sort of specter of Black Hand that kind of forms from like the sort of the black energy that comes from it at one point. So and Hal gets shot. He gets shot by the waitress in the diner, and we see just like this like sends the energy into a tizzy where there's like it's all swooshing around the diner, causing chaos. And Hal is like, "Wait, you're not going to let me die, are you?" Like, because this energy goes into his wound and like pulls out the bullet. And the cliffhanger is just Jo showing up with green energy around her, and she's got like a little Green Lantern symbol on her shirt. She's still wearing civvies, like she's still wearing jeans and like a jacket and whatnot, but she's clearly got Green Lantern energy around her. So clearly there's more story to tell about what happened when Abin Sur came down. I feel like we're going to be flashing back to like the rest of that part of the story throughout this arc.
It's very reminiscent of when Alan Scott uses his. It's like almost a screen flame surrounding, right? Which I thought was pretty curious.
Yeah, I can see that. The question I have here is: Abin Sur a villain? Did he like? I mean, he came with this big Green Lantern symbol, which suggests that he has at least something to do with the Green Lantern still, or is the Green Lantern ship chasing him because he's got the Black Hand stuff and he's actually a villain?
Yeah. Which would make sense, because if you're twisting this, right, where what is the Green Lantern without Will, right? And if Hal's the first person to encounter Abin Sur, and he almost gets this thing that completely takes control of him, right? It's not Will. But there's still a Green Lantern story in here to be told with that ship, and whoever bequeathed this on Jo, right? Because we don't think it's Abin Sur, do we? Because the way Abin talked about him.
I mean, Abin Sur looked pretty menacing from the one glimpse we got of him. So it's kind of, and he didn't have any green energy around him. No, it didn't look like. So I think it's open for debate. But again, like the other Absolute books, there's so much room for them to kind of go in any direction they want. What I did like though is the book started with when Hal's walking down the road. All of the narration coming from like the Black Hand kind of like entity that's kind of attached itself to him. It's all stuff like, "Oh, you're scared, you will feel fear." Like it's all like the opposite of what you usually get with Green Lantern narration, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, as being someone that's born and raised here in Nevada, they're in Evergreen, Nevada, which seems to be up north a bit more. But when we got to the page with the cop car, I was like, that looks like our highway patrol cars. So then when you keep reading and they're in Nevada, I was like, okay, nice touch there from the artist point. And even the surrounding desert looks very familiar to everything around here. So points there to the art to JAHNOY LINDSAY, who I'm not familiar with. But proper stuff there.
You to me as well. Just looking at that Abin Sur page again, I will say it does look like he's maybe inside the Green Lantern circle. Like you can sort of see a part of the curve. So even though you don't see energy around him, I guess you could argue that the entire background has got a green tint, implying that there's an entire green force field around the ship. So maybe he is the Green Lantern here. Maybe he is chasing the Black Hand, and he is the one who gives the energy to Jo if he isn't a villain.
Yeah.
But he does look menacing here, but I mean, that could just be the prejudice of they drew him kind of scary, so I'm just going to assume he's a bad guy.
True, because Hal tells the waitress, he goes, he said his name was Abin Sur. He came from somewhere else. The symbol in the sky, that belonged to him.
Yeah, okay,
and
that
then
was
when
a line
he's
that I
crying
as
here,
well.
and he says he called it the Green Lantern. So who knows? Abin Sur did something. He gave me something. He gave me a weapon. So yeah, he definitely got the black hand from Abin Sur.
So that's conflicting, because on the one hand, okay, the Green Lantern ship is his. I'm calling it a ship for lack of a better word right now. I'm just going to call it that. So he did come with the ship. He does call it the Green Lantern, but he also seemed to be the one who passed on this black hand thing. Is it possible that Abin Sur got infected with this black hand thing, and it's like, you know, it's using them to seek out a new host, and it's found its way to Earth? Is that what we're doing here? Yeah. Is it possible that like Black Hand went from Abin Sur to Hal left, and then Abin Sur was himself again as he's dying after Black Hand's left him, and he says, "Hey Joe."
Right.
Like, you have the ability to overcome great fear. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps, or whatever the equivalent is in the Absolute Universe.
Well, and here it also plays off that Hal wanting to be the hero has almost cursed him, because he keeps saying that I wanted to be the hero, right? And since it seems like he was the first there, he's the one that gets this black hand. And again, maybe it's just like that. Maybe it's something he needs to overcome. You know, and that's not him, because here, right, we get that he's a toy reseller, because they talk about like he's trying to collect.
Excuse me, collectible retailer, I think something like he called it. Yeah.
Yes, but John Stewart's like, yeah, no, you buy and sell toys, my guy. And essentially he's looking for like a Malibu Barbie dream house. That's where he's on his way. You know,
it's very different from being a test pilot for Air Force. Very different career path.
Right, and so the whole idea that him wanting to be the hero and whatever seems to be counterpoint to what we're used to with the reason that Hal, you know, responds to Abin Sur and whatnot.
Yeah,
he's a test pilot who doesn't check for safety and stuff first. He just goes and does things.
Yeah, I think that's my guess right now, is that Abin Sur either is infected or doesn't mean to give the black hand out, and then recruits someone to take his Green Lantern power because he realizes he's dying after he realizes this planet's now in danger. And Joe, for whatever reason, is the one that's picked. Or maybe more than one is picked. Maybe both John's got powers too. Maybe it's divvied up and John's doing something else. Yeah. But
I'm wondering also too if this is how we're gonna get, like, we're just gonna jump right into the whole spectrum, right? And maybe that's where that whole thing, he called it the Green Lantern, you know, as Hal is mistaken that maybe each of them get something different, you know, and they're gonna have to learn how to work together to overcome whatever's coming. Because if the spaceship crashed, there was a reason why, you know, it wasn't just they were in pursuit of something or, you know, running from something else.
I mean, maybe Black Hand did something to bring the ship down. Maybe like this is kind of a crossing that happens. And as far as the spectrum goes, like, who knows what the spectrum's like here? Is there other cores at all? And if there is, like, you know, how does it work? Or maybe I don't know. Like, there's so much like mythology in Green Lantern that they could really like change if they want to here with this.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's also curious that Al Ewing, coming from, you know, Thor and Hulk and that whole idea too, the way that the energy comes out of the Black Hand is very reminiscent of like a symbiote or like Gore, the God Butcher, and the Necro Sword and all that type of stuff too. So I think that's funny. And then the way that Hal is on the run, it was very Hulk, right? Him walking down the lonely desert.
Oh, very classic
and
Hulk.
And the police comes up behind him. Yeah. So just, you know, some of these instincts that are there that I wouldn't usually associate with Green Lantern. And I think Ewing made it work for the better. But anyways, the art, I will say too, some of the faces come off a bit manga-ish, which isn't to my taste. So I wouldn't say that it's not bad, but it's just something that I noticed. And compared to some of the other art styles that we've gotten in the Absolute Universe, it's a bit more different, right? But I think that can work to its advantage, because it's something like Dragota's art in Batman. I feel like it leans into Dragota's style. So I feel like this might lean into Lindsay's style once we really get going.
Yeah, I mean, all the Absolute books have had very different art styles, and I think that's fine. I think they all feel kind of distinct because of that. I do think I agree that some of the faces are a bit in the manga side, which I'm not super into. But I will say I think the layouts are pretty strong. I think the way it builds up through the scenes, the build up to the policeman at the start being dusted, I think is really well done. The pacing's really good. Same with the Black Hand energy sort of swirling around the diner and stuff later, and Abin Sur coming. Like, all of that stuff is really well paced. So this is one of those cases where, like, the faces aren't really to my taste, but the actual overall vibe and aesthetic and pacing and sequential storytelling is very good. So I can kind of get by on that. But admittedly, will I ever pick it for Art of the Week because of the faces? Probably not. But that's, it's a personal taste thing more than it is anything else.
But like you said, the pacing's there because that whole sequence in the diner, right? You can feel the tension. And that's the story working with the art. Yeah, and kind of perfection.
And he does that twice in this book, because he does it at the start with the cop and then again diner, and they're both very effective. So I think there's a lot of confidence in the art in terms of its telling its story. So no complaints on that front. So no. So
looking at JAHNOY LINDSAY, the only other thing they've worked on for DC was that Superboy book that came out in 2023, The Man of Tomorrow. Where Connor went off into space.
Okay.
So which seems like there's just a ton of aliens to work with there. So again, I feel like this is going to lean into that side of things. But yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just I just clicked the name to see what other books that they've worked on.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm impressed with the fact that I have been into every Absolute book pretty much so far. And if I was to sort of at this point, because this is kind of the last one we know about for a while, I'm sure there's going to be more, but this is kind of the last of the issue ones for a bit. I think the weakest one overall is probably Flash. I still enjoyed it, but I think it's probably at the bottom of the list for me. I'm thinking ahead. It's kind of weird. It's a bit unfair to rank books that have had entire arcs versus just one issues. So it's hard to do a full ranking, but
you can compare all the first issues, right?
No, that's true. You could compare the first issues. Yeah.
And Flash is still, as much as I love the concept of Flash, right, and I have a soft spot, it is still the weakest. Martian Manhunter was a bit out there. This was a bit more straightforward, so I would probably put it right about there, maybe a little bit over Martian Manhunter in terms of first issues. But I still think it's behind the first three.
It's definitely tough because they're doing very different things, and I can see, depending on your taste, like one or two of them really speaking to you more than the others, regardless of what anyone else says. I mean, we've kind of lined up and really loving the Wonder Woman book and feeling quite strong about the others. I mean, Connor's not as into Absolute Superman. He's a bit more mixed on that. So yeah, no, it's just interesting that I don't think there's been a dud. Like I think the quality's not been the exact same across the board, but everything's been at least I think even Flash has good potential, and there was things I liked in the first issue, although I think as a first issue it didn't excite me as much as this did, or Martian Manhunter did, and certainly not the Trinity of books did. So but the Absolute line is kind of cooking, so we'll see where we go with this, and it's kind of this interesting sense of discovery with all the books. It's almost kind of weird in the sense that it's like, okay, we've got this line of number ones launching within 4 months, 5 months of each other, depending, and they all feel quite fresh, and they're all very different takes on these classic characters, and some of them doing very wildly different things with them, and it feels quite good. And it got me thinking about the New 52 and how bad that felt. And I think there is just something to be said of those weren't different enough. And don't get me wrong, that would have still been a problem because we didn't want to lose the classic versions of the characters. Like, that's a problem in and of itself. But I think the reason why the Absolute Universe can work is because, we get to do really different versions of those characters. We get to go wild with how much we change and have unique voices with those characters.
Yeah. Like when the New 52 launched, Batman was still pretty much the same, and Green Lantern was still pretty much the same.
No, but
imagine.
But even the ones that were different, Matt, even the ones that it completely rebooted, like Superman, it just didn't it was kind of weird because it was treading water. It couldn't commit to being truly different. It had to kind of still ride the line of being recognizable and not doing anything that was going to piss people off. But obviously, it was pretty bad anyway, just because it, you know.
Yeah, the point that I was going to get to is imagine the Absolute kicks off, but it's like it still has those kind of restrictions to it, right? Where they still have to, this still has to happen and this still has to happen because of editorial, as opposed to these have free reign, right? The Absolute Universe, it seems like the creatives can kind of are doing what they want as of right now. Which helps the line as a I
assume that there is some editorial oversight in the sense that they all have to fit together eventually, so there's probably some limits. There's probably some things like I'm sure Al Ewing, when he's writing Green Lantern, can't just out of nowhere say Thanagar get destroyed 50 years ago, because in 6 months time there might be an Absolute Hawkman that needs to do something with Thanagar, so there's probably still limits in places, but it seems like they have pretty open reign to do what they want with these characters here.
Right. So, and I feel like that's where it makes it feel stronger. And they're also rolling them out at a proper pace instead of just dropping, 13 books on us, and they all kind of meld together. So,
we've had, because we've had like maybe a full arc of the first 3 books by the time that all these, like this second wave, if you will, Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter being the second wave of the books. So it's actually kind of nice in a weird way that they're focusing on Joe potentially, even though Hal gets more page time in this first issue. I think focusing on Joe as the main Lantern of this book, at least to begin with, is kind of nice, because it means that each like wave of books has had like a female focused story, which is nice.
So that's true.
I don't know. Well, we'll see. Anyway, what were you giving Absolute Green Lantern, Matt?
I'm gonna just a straight 8.
Yeah, I was thinking around there as well. I think it's got a lot of potential, and I think the sequential art's very good, and I kind of dig the kind of the almost horror movie vibe that I was getting from the Black Hand stuff, where it's this, like you say, a symbiote, something that's attached itself to him, and I'm excited to discover all the new rules and all the things we're going to do with all that stuff.